Welcome, time traveler. Today we strip away the illusion of modern Manhattan to reveal the brutal city buried beneath it. Long before the skyline of steel, there was a New York of shadows, a place of grease-soaked tenements, poor immigrants, and the suffocating grit of the slums. We're going beyond the 5 points to reconstruct the most brutal corners of 1880. Witness the dark heart of the American dream. This is New York, 1800s. To understand why New York's slums were the most brutal in the world, one must understand the math of the 19th century. New York was exploding. Between 1840 and 1890, the city didn't just grow, it convulsed. Millions of immigrants, Irish, Germans, Italians, and Eastern Europeans, poured off the ships, driven by famine, war, and the desperate hope of the American dream. But the city they found was a predatory machine. Space was the most valuable commodity, and the men who owned the land realized something sinister. You could make more money by cramming 40 families into a decaying house than by renting it to one wealthy tenant. This was the birth of the tenement system. It wasn't just poor housing, it was a deliberate architecture of greed. But this system was not chaos, it was organized neglect. Behind landlords stood political protection. The powerful machine of Tammany Hall ensured that inspections were rare, violations ignored, and votes quietly exchanged for survival. The slums were not hidden from the system, they were part of it. As the wealthy moved north to escape the noise and the stench, they left behind their grand federal-style mansions. These once elegant homes were quickly gutted. A single parlor was divided into 4 rooms. Hallways were partitioned into closets for sleeping. But even that wasn't enough. In the backyards, the small patches of earth meant for air and light, landlords built rear tenements. These were towering wooden or brick barracks, built so close to the front buildings that you could reach out a window and touch the wall of your neighbor. This created a landscape of double alleys, dark, damp canyons where the sun never touched the ground and where the air remained stagnant for decades. In the Fourth Ward, this was not the exception. It was daily life. To step into the Fourth Ward in 1880 was to enter a world built on neglect. Streets choked with waste, air thick with soot, and entire blocks left to rot in plain sight. Near the shadow of the Brooklyn Bridge lay Blind Man's Alley, a narrow, lightless passage where landlord Daniel Murphy rented dark, crumbling rooms to blind beggars, men who could not see the conditions they were forced to endure. But Blind Man's Alley was not unique. It was a concentrated version of a much larger reality. Inside the tenements, rooms were often no more than 10 feet square, spaces that served as kitchen, bedroom, workshop, and nursery, all at once. In the summer, the heat became suffocating. In the winter, damp walls turned to ice. Journalist and photographer Jacob Riis documented these conditions firsthand, describing families of 9 or more crammed into a single room, with little more than rags and a stove. To survive, many took in boarders, strangers paying a few cents for a place on the floor, turning one room into shelter for 12 or more. Water was a constant struggle, and often deadly. Most tenements relied on a single iron pump, but the groundwater was frequently contaminated by nearby latrines, spreading cholera and typhus through entire buildings. In such density, disease didn't spread slowly. It moved fast, turning homes into silent tombs within days. The slums weren't just places to live, they were places to die for a wage. In the Lower East Side, the sweatshop system turned entire tenements into factories, where immigrants labored in their own homes, sewing garments for the grand stores of Broadway. By the flicker of a single kerosene lamp, men, women, and children worked up to 16 hours a day, paid only pennies per piece. This was the brutal reality of New York's progress, the wealth of Wall Street stitched together in the darkness of the slums. If you moved west, toward what would become Hell's Kitchen, the brutality took a different form. Slaughterhouses and gasworks lined the Hudson, while Death Avenue, railroad tracks running through the streets, cut directly past tenement doors, with no fences or warning. The area was a landscape of industry and danger, where the stench of blood and gas filled the air, and gangs fought for scarce dock work in a world defined by violence and survival. Above all of this, the city continued to grow richer. The labor extracted from these streets fueled the rise of uptown wealth, creating two realities within one city, one visible and one deliberately ignored. When night fell, the Fourth Ward revealed its true threat, not in the streets, but below them. The swamp angels moved through massive sewers beneath the city, striking ships along the East River and vanishing without a trace. The police refused to enter. In that underground maze, the dark made the rules. Inside the Dirty Spoon, danger waited in every stairwell. Rackets filled the dark hallways, groups pooling coins for cheap beer or rot-gut whiskey. A wrong word, a stolen sip, and it turned deadly. By morning, there was always a body. No witnesses, no sound. In the Fourth Ward, silence kept you alive. But the worst danger wore clean clothes. Slum kings like Daniel Murphy ran places like Gotham Court, once built for hope, now filled with death. They still collected rent, still blamed the poor. This was the real cruelty, profit without mercy. The tension of the slums couldn't be contained forever. It erupted in the Draft Riots of 1863, but the everyday violence was just as telling. The New York City Draft Riots were among the most violent urban uprisings in American history. Days of uncontrolled rage where the boundaries between order and chaos completely collapsed. What began as protest turned into something far darker. Crowds flooded the streets, targeting symbols of power and the most vulnerable. Buildings burned, the city fractured, and for 4 days New York belonged not to law, but to fury. The fate of these slums was not a peaceful transition, it was an execution. In the late 1890s and early 1900s, the city finally decided that the Fourth Ward, the 5 Points, and the worst of the Lower East Side were public nuisances. The slum clearance movements began. Thousands of tenements were demolished. The Dirty Spoon was reduced to dust. The crooked alleys were straightened into the wide, cold boulevards we see today. The brutal slums of the 1800s were a nightmare, but they were also the forge of modern New York. They forced the city to invent the Board of Health, to create the first building codes, and to recognize that the other half could no longer be ignored. It was the work of Jacob Riis that helped force that recognition, his images exposing what words alone could not. New York's history isn't in marble, but beneath the streets. The slums are gone, but their echoes remain. Thank you for journeying back with us. What lost world should we uncover next?